Robert Reed hated the Brady Bunch, but he had a soft spot for his TV wife, Florence Henderson. Years after the show went off the air, he called her out of the blue, and what he told her shocked her to her core. A generation of people grew up on the sitcom The Brady Bunch, and future generations grew up on its reruns. At the center of the show was patriarch Mike Brady, played by Robert Reed. The Brady dad was a little cooler than most dads, carrying around his tube full of architectural drawings. But there was something that audiences didn't know about the TV dad, an explosive secret that he would carry to his grave. Robert Reed had a pretty sweet childhood. His parents were high school sweethearts who got married at the tender age of 18. Reed came along on October 19, 1932. The three of them lived together in Highland Park, Illinois, a suburb of Chicago. Dad worked for the government, and Mom was a homemaker. It was a typical suburban childhood, and it was about to get turned upside down. When Reed was still young, his daily routine in Highland Park was completely upended by his family. Suddenly, the Reed family moving all over the country and had trouble finding a place to settle down. They first tried Texas and then Oklahoma. In Muskogee, Reed's father got a job on a turkey farm, and Reed started getting involved with a 4-H club. Sure, Reed thought that working with cattle was pretty cool, but his true heart belonged to something else. After performing on stage in high school productions, Reed just wanted more. He started studying drama at Northwestern University in Illinois, where he met Alvina Krause, who was one of the directors at the university. Krause had a reputation as a maker of stars. Krause must have lit a fire under Reed, because after Northwestern, he took a big leap. While Reed spent only one term at the Royal Academy of Performing Arts in London, it was enough. He came back to the States and dove into professional theater. He joined a group called the Shakespeareites and nabbed lead performances in their off-Broadway productions of Romeo and Juliet and A Midsummer's Night Dream. And speaking of dreams, Reed had a massive one. He was dying to go to Hollywood. Despite the fact that he tirelessly pursued his passion for the performing arts, Robert Reed still made time for a wild love life. In 1954, he married Marilyn Rosenberger, who he had met at Northwestern University. The couple had a daughter in 1956, but their wedded bliss was short-lived. 3 years later, they got a divorce. At the time, no one said much about the reason for the divorce, but it became crystal clear much later. Reed's first job in Hollywood was on the sitcom Father Knows Best. This was a wholesomer than wholesome show that in some ways was a precursor to Reed's most famous TV role. After his spot on Father Knows Best, he had guest appearances on sci-fi series Men into Space and Western series Lawman. All this TV work was great, but what most actors wanted was a big break in film, and Reed was getting tired of waiting. In 1959, Reed started work on the horror film Bloodlust. Unfortunately, he was in for an unpleasant surprise. This was a B-movie whose plot was given away in the poster slogan, "He hunted humans." It wasn't an illustrious beginning to Reed's big screen career, and critics called him and his fellow actors one-dimensional. After this embarrassing failure, Reed focused himself firmly on television. Following the failed Bloodlust, Robert Reed nabbed his first starring role on a TV series. This was The Defenders, which, considering when it was made, hit on some pretty serious topics. The story followed father-son defense attorneys, and episodes dealt with stuff like civil rights, atheism, and even abortion. The man playing Reed's father, E.G. Marshall, won 2 Emmys for his performance. Marshall was a founding member of the Actors Studio. Reed, seeing his co-star with his awards, soon signed up. While Reed was still doing The Defenders, he got a chance to do something completely different. This was a romantic comedy, and it was on Broadway. Neil Simon's Barefoot in the Park had not yet been made into a movie. It was live on stage, and the lead actor, Robert Redford, was stepping down. Reed got a call to replace him, and it was the first step in a life-changing experience. When Paramount Pictures was ready to make Barefoot in the Park into a movie, I'm sure Reed thought he had a chance at it. After all, he had done the role on Broadway. He was in for a serious disappointment. Sadly for Reed, the studio went with big star Robert Redford to do the film version. There was, however, still some hope. You see, there was going to also be a TV version of the same play. Now Reed had to be absolutely certain to get the role. He played it on Broadway, and he was already a recognizable small-screen star. Well, things didn't really work out that way. Yes, ABC had decided to do a TV series based on Barefoot in the Park, and yes, Reed seemed like the guy to bring the role to the small screen. There was one issue, however: the color of Reed's skin. ABC wanted to try something new. They wanted a sitcom featuring a mostly African-American cast, and this was going to be it. It was a bold move that sadly lasted only a few months. Reed had missed out on a TV sitcom, but there was another one waiting for him that would change his life forever. ABC felt a little bad about leaving Reed out of the TV version of Barefoot in the Park, so they had another offer for him. To be honest, he was actually their second choice. This was for a new sitcom about a blended family. A widow with 3 kids marries a widower who also had 3 kids. ABC, however, had already decided on Gene Hackman. Hackman, who we know is one of the biggest names in Hollywood, lost out to Reed, all for a surprising reason. Sherwood Schwartz was the creator of the Brady Bunch and wanted Gene Hackman to play the father in the series. Hackman, who would go on to have a huge career in films, even winning 2 Academy Awards for his acting, was then unknown to audiences. Robert Reed had a face that TV audiences recognized, so he got the part. Reed may have had the face, but there was something else wrong with him: his head. Film star Jeffrey Hunter wanted the role of Mike Brady, but the studio thought that Hunter was too handsome for the role of a suburban dad. Reed apparently wasn't too handsome, but something else was holding Schwartz back from hiring him. Apparently his head was too small. Once Schwartz got past Reed's small head, he then had another job: convincing Reed to take the part. He did it with a little white lie. Robert Reed had trained as a Shakespearean actor and had performed on the very serious legal drama, The Defenders. For this reason, ABC told Reed that this new show would be a boundary-pushing program about the modern family in America. Okay, but that doesn't sound at all like the Brady Bunch I grew up watching. Clearly the studio wanted Reed, but they knew he would have issues with such a lightweight show. So, what happens when you trick your main actor into accepting a role? It quickly becomes a nightmare. Robert Reed eventually agreed to star as Mike Brady. So, what was the Shakespearean actor going to make of this very silly sitcom where his co-stars were 6 children? Well, trouble started very quickly. The basic program was this: Reed thought that the show was beneath him. Instead of quitting, however, he decided to make life difficult for all those involved. Reed had countless opinions about the scripts for the Brady Bunch, and he made them known on a constant basis. According to Reed, if he hadn't demanded the changes to the script, the Brady Bunch would have been a very different show. It would have been more like Schwartz's previous show, Gilligan's Island, which was mostly gags and physical comedy. Sure, maybe some of Reed's suggestions made the show better, but other ones made him look just plain bonkers. One thing that Reed did while making the Brady Bunch was nitpick about the script, and sometimes he took it too far. In one episode, when the family was making strawberry jam, Reed had a line that referenced the lovely smell of the strawberries. Reed had done his research and found out that strawberries actually had no smell when they were cooking. He went to creator Schwartz and told him he would not say the line. Schwartz, who was likely a very busy man, took Reed down to the set where they were actually cooking strawberries and let Reed have a sniff. Sure enough, it was clear that strawberries did indeed have a smell when cooked. Reed's reaction was bizarre. The smell test didn't matter to Reed. He'd read otherwise and still refused to say the line. They later had to compromise with this line: "I do believe I've died and gone to strawberry heaven." Shakespeare couldn't have written it any better himself. Reed's complaints didn't stop at strawberries. Not at all. In another episode, Reed's on-screen son was selling hair tonic in order to earn a little extra pocket money. Reed found out that the hair tonic little Bobby Brady was selling did not actually have FDA approval. Reed didn't want to send the message that the Brady family didn't care about the public safety. Reed once again sent his objections to Schwartz, who had to deal with one very irate star. On top of his insistence that he help the scriptwriters, Reed also had a problem with the props department. One episode had Alice the housekeeper spilling ink on her uniform. To protect the uniform, the props department used fake ink, and Reed found out. The aftermath was chilling. Reed's outrage was too huge for a simple verbal attack, so he sat down and wrote an irate memo, of multiple pages to the show's executives. In it, he said that the ink stain was unfunny and that even a laugh machine would balk at it. In yet another episode, Reed's character had to slip on a broken egg that had fallen on the floor. Reed thought that slipping on an egg was far-fetched, and he complained. I guess in all his Shakespearean training, characters slipped on things like their enemy's blood, and not on eggs. Well, the Brady Bunch set was a little short on bloodshed. Reed seemed intent on making a big deal out of every little thing. There were, however, more than just script complaints. In season 5, the Bradys go to a theme park and one scene had the kids on a roller coaster. Reed said that he would not allow the kids to film the scene until the crew had tested the safety of the roller coaster. You see, they had attached a camera to the ride so they could record the children's reactions to the roller coaster. This must have seemed just like one more of Reed's annoying complaints, but it wasn't. The crew eventually listened to Reed's advice and did a test run of the roller coaster with its attached camera and without the kids. Sure enough, the worst happened. While the roller coaster did its run, the camera came apart from the roller coaster and landed exactly where the kids would have been sitting. Finally, Reed's belly aching had paid off. This, however, was a small victory. Reed was still miserable working on the Brady Bunch. Robert Reed was clearly unhappy playing Mike Brady on the Brady Bunch, and he coped in a disturbing way. He would often placate himself with a liquid lunch. The problem with a liquid lunch was that he had to perform inebriated right after. Usually the child actors had finished their days early, so they didn't have to see their on-screen dad tipsy and often angry. And what about Reed's relationship with the kids? What was that like? Thankfully, Reed's issues with the show's creator, writers, and props department did not spill over to other actors. In fact, Reed was a sort of father figure to the young stars. One Christmas, he bought all 6 actors Super 8 cameras to encourage them to be creative. He also took all of them to England where he taught them about Shakespeare, whether they wanted to learn or not. Reed was certainly born to be a dad. There was, however, something stopping him from fully embracing that role. Even if Robert Reed was so unhappy about playing the perfect dad, at least he had other options. While appearing on the Brady Bunch, Reed also had a recurring role on tough guy show Mannix. Paramount Pictures was producing both shows, so they didn't mind scheduling around Reed's time. And in case Reed felt homesick for Carol and the kids, they used the Brady house on Mannix as well. Reed was a busy man, and he wanted to get busier. Aside from being a pain in the neck on the set of the Brady Bunch, Reed had other aspirations. He also wanted to direct. In the end, he managed to convince the ABC executives, who likely didn't like Reed at all, to let him direct 4 episodes. The executives probably thought that Reed would complain less if he was behind the camera. Sadly, being in the director's chair did little to improve Reed's attitude. The studio had had enough. It was time to do something. The Brady Bunch ran for only 5 seasons, and Reed's attitude toward the show remained the same. The writers even had to remove Reed from some episodes because he was too difficult to work with. Just before they filmed the season 5 finale, Schwartz reached a breaking point with Reed. He fired Reed on the spot. Schwartz was likely overjoyed. He was finally through with this very problematic actor. Or was he? Reed no longer worked on the Brady Bunch, but he also refused to do something else. Leave. There was no reason for Reed to be on the set while they filmed the final episode of season 5, but he insisted on staying. Apparently the security people offered to remove him, but Schwartz said no, because he didn't want to upset the child actors. When season 5 was a wrap, Schwartz was finally rid of the problematic Reed. Now, with season 6 just around the corner, Schwartz had a new problem. How was he going to explain to fans where Dad was? According to fans of the Brady Bunch, Reed's Mike Brady was the perfect father. They had no idea how hard it was to work with Reed. So, when Schwartz fired Reed, he had to come up with a plan, and what the writers chose was seriously drastic. They wanted to kill off the character. The 6th season was going to find poor Carol Brady as a widow again. She would keep the 6 kids, and they would help her find a new man. The reason that none of this sounds familiar is because ABC decided to cancel the show before the 6th season ever began. Reed was finally through with his role as a perfect father in the Brady Bunch. So, what would he do now? Robert Reed did really want to do more serious work, and he proved this with his post-Brady Bunch career. Well, most of it, Besides appearing on TV fluff like Charlie's Angels and Fantasy Island, Reed did get a chance to show his dramatic flair. He earned great reviews and nominations for his work on 2 miniseries, Roots and Rich Man, Poor Man. It was, however, on TV's Medical Center where he tackled a topic ahead of its time. In a double episode of the hospital drama Medical Center, Reed plays a doctor with a secret. He's transgendered. It was an episode ahead of its time, and Reed received an Emmy for his work. Clearly, Reed was succeeding without the Brady Bunch. So how would he feel if ABC asked him to do it again? Just wait and see. Reed was clearly enjoying being away from Schwartz and the Brady Bunch. He was now able to take the roles he wanted and earn respect as a serious actor. At this time, ABC had an idea for a variety show centered around the Brady family. It would be singing and dancing and some comedic skits. Just 2 years after Reed had finally rid himself of the show he hated so much, ABC wanted him to play Mike Brady once again, but this time in a variety show. In case you've forgotten, Reed had been a Shakespearean actor. Why on earth did the executives at ABC think that Reed would even think for a moment to agree to it? Well, agree he did. As it turned out, Reed really just wanted to sing and dance. Reed may have wanted to sing and dance, but it turned out he could do neither. Florence Henderson said that Reed had 2 left feet. It didn't matter. Reed was now a happy member of the Brady family. At the end of the day, Reed reprised his role as Mike Brady in 5 different shows. In November of 1991, Robert Reed had a dire health scare. Doctors told him he had colon lymphoma, which is a rare type of colon cancer. When his situation became more dire, he called for only 2 people, his real-life daughter Karen and his best friend actor Anne Haney. Reed wasn't one to go big on publicity. He wanted this illness kept quiet, but that didn't quite happen. When Reed's health was really in jeopardy, he did eventually call his TV wife Florence Henderson. He told Henderson about his medical condition and had one request of her, but it was an agonizing one. He wanted her to call the other cast members from the Brady Bunch and tell them the news that he wasn't going to make it. Henderson made the difficult phone calls and then waited to see what happened. Sadly, she didn't have long to wait. On May 12, 1992, just a few weeks after talking to Henderson, Reed succumbed to his illness and passed at Huntington Memorial Hospital. He was 59 years old. Newspapers announced Reed's demise, and they also named the culprit. It had been cancer. A little later, the details of Reed's medical certificate became public. A generation of Brady Bunch fans were in for the shock of their lives. When the public had a chance to see doctors' comments on Robert Reed's medical reports, it was a shock. It turned out that at the time of his passing, Reed had been HIV positive. The public couldn't believe the news. Fans were confused as this disease was commonly associated with homosexual men at the time. How could the squarest dad on television be HIV positive? It was about time that Reed's real life came out, and it took a Brady messenger to deliver the news. Years later, Florence Henderson finally spoke out about when she and Reed started working together. She said that when she and Reed were supposed to be acting romantically, as any husband and wife would, Reed seemed to shy away. Henderson wasn't used to men not wanting to get close to her, so she asked Reed what the problem was. What he told her wasn't at all what she expected. Reed revealed a secret he'd kept hidden for years. He was gay. This was the 1970s, and virtually no actor was out of the closet. Long after Reed's passing, Henderson shared her thoughts on her TV husband. She said that she knew Reed was a very unhappy man, and thought that maybe it was due to having to live a double life. She also thought that if Reed had come out, the American public would not have bought Reed's character as a perfect dad. It would have been the end of the Brady Bunch. While filming the Brady Bunch, Reed became friends with Barry Williams, who played his eldest son, Greg Brady. Of course, there was a huge age difference, but the two became quite close. Williams later said that the topic of Reed's orientation never came up in their private chats. It was clear that Reed had no intention of talking about it at all. He kept his secret for his entire adult life. While Robert Reed may not have been able to come out as a gay man back in the day, he did support the rights of LGBT people. It turned out that he helped the kids on the Brady Bunch have more open-minded views about the LGBT issues. This was the 1970s, and many people refused to even talk about these topics. In his own quiet way, Reed pushed the movement forward.
For exclusive perks like early access to new videos, priority replies to your comments, and to have your say on future content, consider becoming a Factinate member. On top of that, your support helps keep the channel going. Click the link in the description for more details.
If you enjoyed this Factinate video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe for more incredible stories. Want to say in who we cover next? Join our membership program through the link in the description for exclusive perks. Your support means everything to us. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.